the sad story of Pataseca, the man who fathered over 200 slaves against his will. This is one story in the history of transatlantic slave era that will leave you with goosebumps. The unimaginable dehumanizing act of how enslaved Africans individuals were forced to produce children who will in turn become slaves. One would, as why were enslaved man and women forced to mate and produce more slaves? And how did this one man, Pataseca, manage to father over 200 slaves in a particular slave breeding farm? Well, to have a clear understanding of this dark chapter of the history, we will now go back in time to the year 1808, when the slave trade in the United States was abolished. But before we proceed with the video, please, if you haven't subscribed yet and you found value in this video, kindly hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, share your opinion in the comment section below. However, this marked the beginning of a horrific new chapter for black African slaves. While the trade itself was prohibited, slavery itself was not abolished. This is because slave owners were allowed to keep the slaves they already had, but no new slaves could be imported from Africa. This presented a problem for the slave owners. They needed more slaves to work on their plantations in order to maintain their profits and lifestyles. So the slave masters were determined to find a quick solution to tackle this shortage of slaves. They saw the ability of black women slaves to have children as a means to replenish their workforce. Therefore, they came up with a despicable solution reminiscent of animal breeding farms. Black men and women slaves were forced to mate with the sole purpose of producing more children who would be enslaved. This were done without considering the desires or well-being of these enslaved Africans. Terms like breeders, breeding slaves, childbearing women, breeding period, and too old to breed became part of the common vocabulary during this dark time. Firstly, slave owners implemented a rigorous selection process to maximize the productivity and profitability of their human property. Driven solely by economic motives, slave owners utilized specific criteria that stripped enslaved individuals of their humanity and subjected them to unimaginable suffering. Central among the selection criteria were physical attributes, particularly strength and health. Enslaved individuals with robust qualities were chosen, as their offspring were assumed to inherit these traits, making them better suited for labor-intensive tasks. This stark commodification reduced humans to mere tools for productivity. Gender played a significant role, with women forced into reproductive roles to expand the labor force, while men were chosen for their potential to father multiple children. Age also factored into the selection process, favoring younger individuals due to assumed higher fertility rates. So the white supremacist slave owners sought out muscular black men with robust traits, just like in animal breeding where healthy males are necessary to mate with many females. One such black slave man was Pataseca. His story stands out among others. He fathered an astonishing number of children, essentially a whole village. His children would grow up to be slaves forced to work on cotton and sugar plantations. But behind the name Pataseca was a man named Roque José Florencio, born in Africa and brought to Brazil as a slave. His existence was marked by the cruel scars of oppression and the dehumanizing institution of slavery. He was reduced to a breeder, stripped of his individuality and autonomy. His sole purpose was to mate with whomever his masters ordered in order to produce more enslaved children. He was forced to mate with hundreds of black women slaves, resulting in over 200 children. Think about the conditions in which these forced matings took place and the inhumanity that Pataseca must have felt. Pataseca, a towering figure standing at an impressive 7 feet and 2 inches, was assigned the duty of mating with black women slaves. This unfortunate practice occurred despite these women carrying babies in their bellies, as they were forced to work on the plantations. Pataseca's physical attributes, such as his long legs and strong hands and feet, earned him the nickname Pataseca, meaning dry paw, in the context of the custom of assigning animal names to black slaves on the farm. Because of his advantageous traits, Pataseca's owner compelled him to mate with all the black women slaves. The intention behind this disturbing practice was to produce slave children with the same tall stature, muscular body, and strong hands, seen as attributes that could generate higher profits for slave owners. During that era, superstitions believed that tall men with lean legs were more likely to father male offspring, which was highly desirable for labor-intensive tasks. Consequently, Pata Seca, known as Roque, was thrust into the role of a breeder by his owner. This ominous designation required him to impregnate the female slaves on the farm. The legacy of Pata Seca extends through generations, with approximately 30% of the population in the district of Santa Eudoxia, São Carlos, able to trace their roots back to him. His role as a breeder aimed to enhance his owner's workforce by introducing genetically advantageous traits. Pata Seca himself was treated as less than human, like a prized breeding horse. His strong physical traits and ability to tirelessly work on the plantations made him valuable to his owners. They saw his biological advantage and sought to capitalize on it. These children were destined to follow in their parents' footsteps, forced into a life of slavery on the plantations. They would off to preserve their strong traits, creating a robust workforce for the slave owners. The ultimate goal was to have a sufficient number of slaves to sustain the entire institution of slavery without the need to import more from Africa. They were treated as animals, forced to mate and breed, multiplying the enslaved population for the benefit of their owners. This dark practice exemplifies the cruelty and inhumanity of slavery, where human beings were treated as tools for economic gain. The system not only perpetuated the institution of slavery, but also perpetuated the cycle of oppression, with children being born into a life of servitude and suffering. Exploring this painful history sheds light on the resilience and strength of the enslaved individuals who navigated these oppressive circumstances, and serves as a reminder of the lasting consequences of systemic exploitation. Thank you for watching. I would like to take a moment to express our sincere gratitude for your continued support. Your viewership inspires us to create engaging content that we hope you find enjoyable and informative. For the new viewers, we kindly ask you to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell icon to stay updated with our latest uploads. Your subscription allows us to reach a larger audience and bring you more quality content. Additionally, we encourage you to share our videos with your friends and family who might also find them interesting. Your recommendation means the world to us.